we have another one of these old PCs. You know the ones. Basically look like this. I guess you could call this a part 2 because I've already made one video of a hardware swap on one of these, and I'm basically using the same general platform, but just slightly different. These are probably a little bit more what I'm after in terms of what we need for what we're running here. And they've got the typical port arrangement. It's a little bit different from the other one. I think it's got both PS2. It's also got a DVI. Not that it matters. I would like to change everything over to DisplayPort anyway, just for completeness and commonality's sake with everything else. But my concern is that even though it says ready for these, that the BIOS revision that this is going to come with out of the box is not high enough to support the 5600G chip that we're going to be using. I got this one as a trial machine, similar to the other one. The box is actually sitting down there for that board. As a trial, we'll try it out and see what happens. Right before I get started with much of anything on this, though, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up because ick. Pretty gross. Look at that nice carpet. Again, it looks like this one's not too rusty compared to a lot of these. There's some more rust on the front. I'm also not sure why this one's got a fan in the front, just that it does. But I'll leave it there. So, here's my little 3M electronics vacuum here that we've got. Much better than it was. Not great, especially not on that fan. I don't know what it is, but the dust just sticks to everything. I don't think it's related to, I know when you get mixed dust with nicotine residue, it ends up sticking to everything, but I don't think it's the same reason. It could be, but I kind of really doubt it. Either way, I gotta get this cabling out of here, and I'm gonna pull these drives out because I think that they're gonna be in my way. So I'll pull the drives. I've pulled the rear fan because I can tell you for a fact that it's gonna be in my way. And then I gotta pull this board out. Okay, wiring is unplugged from the board, so this can be pulled out now. Once again, I have managed to choose one of these. It's got one of the first gen, what I would consider, or what I'm going to call the first gen power supplies. So it's tempting to replace that, but I don't know if I've got anything that's any better than sitting around here. I know I've got some carcasses there that have got some newer power supplies in them, but really, they're Thermaltake and Coolmax, which I don't think is going to be any better than this Fortron source that's in here. It's also tempting to replace the SSD, because this is an old 250 gig SSD. But I think I'm going to hold off on that because I don't know how many 500s I've got left. And I also don't really want to have to do the imaging work on this either. So I just want it to be plug and play, really. At least as plug and play as it can possibly be. Okay, here's the new board out of the packaging. It's basically the same stuff that the other one came with. Not much different. The I/O plate is like the other one, which means that unfortunately it's got these stupid tabs here that stick way up. I don't really like that. I was kind of hoping that on the Pro board they'd have stuck with something more like this, where it's got this metal material with foam, and that acts as the grounding. But no, they gotta use these dumb tabs that I'm pretty sure I'm going to get the board stuck on, so I guess we'll find out. Just look at the board, complete with its green PCB. Couple differences from the last board. I think there are fewer USB ports, or maybe there's the same number, they're just in a slightly different arrangement. This still has the VGA, the HDMI, and the DisplayPort, but like I mentioned, it also has the DVI, or maybe I didn't mention it and I'm mentioning it now. It's also got the serial port on board there, and both of the PS2. If I remember right, this board here, and you can kind of see it. Yeah, it only had the combination PS2, and yeah, there are less USB ports on the other one. Kind of interesting. I didn't realize that at first. And it's only got the VGA, the DisplayPort, and the HDMI. There's no DVI. Other differences, because this is the Pro, it's the business grade board. You can see we've got the COM header there, which for whatever reason is labeled COM1, and this is COM2. I don't know why. It should be the other way around. LPT for parallel port. It's got the chassis intrusion, which I'm going to go ahead and jump her out, or maybe I'll just leave it alone because I don't know which way that this board does it. I guess we'll find out. I'm surprised it doesn't have a jumper on it right away, but I guess it doesn't. And the usual stuff. I think those are both USB headers down there. It does have the 3.0, which I'm not going to use. It's got a PCI slot, which again we're not going to use. It's only got 2 RAM slots though. And it's also a shorter board. It doesn't extend all the way out to the last set of screw holes. But not that that really matters. So I'll go ahead and I'll get the RAM and CPU installed on this, and then we can get it put into the case. Okay. Here you can see I have the chip installed. I've also pulled the cradle off. I just need to install the RAM and the heatsink. Okay, so now that that's done, couple of pieces of advice here. When you're installing this particular cooler from AMD, always make sure that the AMD logo faces the ports, like this, because otherwise it will not clear your memory. Don't ask me how I know that. If you go back in my videos, if you remember the first one of these that I put together with a cooler that looked like this, well, it wasn't done right, and anyway, it was over there and it blocked one of the RAM slots, but at the end of the day, I suppose it doesn't really matter. On a system like this, it does, because it would bump up right against that memory. And that's, obviously that wouldn't work. But always make sure that you get that in the right place. It does mean that this is kind of a little stupid, but I don't know, that's just AMD and their fan design. Would have been nice if they gave you enough wire to be able to run it around that way, but they didn't, so this is what we got to work with. The other thing, too, with mounting a cooler like this that's under a lot of spring tension, don't over-tighten these. Basically just go till they stop. You can see that they're actually kind of designed to be thumb screws. I wouldn't really use them as thumb screws because you're not going to get it tight enough like that, but basically just go till they stop. You don't need to tighten it any more than that. Also, make sure that you're using a good quality screwdriver, not some worn-out Phillips. This cooler is not so bad, but there are some that are under a lot of spring tension, and you got to push down really hard in order to get the screw to go back, the screw to go into the hole there in the mounting. And if you slip off that screw, you will stab right through your motherboard, and then you will be inventing new swear words. Again, don't ask me how I know that. So now I got to get this into the case with the I/O plate, and hopefully not get that stupid those tabs inside any of these ports. There it is, inside the case. I did actually have to bend those tabs on that I/O shield because they were actually bent downwards and going into the port, like I feared when I was trying to install this. Correctly, I might add. So, I don't know if maybe this is just a little bit off, or if those got bent in shipping or something, but yeah, I had to bend that. Didn't have to do it for the DVI. The DVI was fine, but it's just the other two that can go into the port, and then you can't use the port. Might even damage the port if you tighten it down too much, depending upon how the tabs are laid out and anything like that. But it almost looks like this doesn't line up quite right, and there's a lot of open gaps, so I'm kind of a little disappointed in the workmanship of this I/O plate. I don't know. I've never really been much of a fan of Asus at all, but they're really the only ones with this kind of hardware. We've had problems with the Gigabyte boards, so that's why I wouldn't go with them. And I know that MSI is pretty decent these days, but again, I have a specific need for these that really the only thing that can fulfill that is this Asus board. So that's why I went with the Asus. Plus for parts commonality with the old ones. Not that there's anything in common with this and what came out of it. Okay, cabled up, everything. I hate these things so much, but this one actually wasn't too bad. Usually the tabs at the top like to put up a fight when you want to put them back. What I would love to do with these, if I actually had the budget to do it, and I probably do if I actually would ask, but I just don't feel like it, is replace these stupid plastic garbage things and the fans that are in it with good quality fans. But one diatribe at a time, really. Funny thing is we don't have a lot of fan failures in these. It's usually either the power supply fan or the CPU fan. It's never the case fans, which is kind of odd. So whatever case fans they used in these are actually not too bad quality. But I'm going to go ahead and hook up the drives. Put the drives in, hook it all up, and see if this thing actually even works at all. Okay, there it is. All reassembled. Well, except for the side panel. I don't know why I'm getting the feeling that something's going to go wrong, but at least if it does, it'll happen on video. Again, I'll point out, I don't think this board has got a 5-volt standby LED on it. Or maybe it's just not working at all. Huh. Let me check the power connection. Well, I figured it out, I hope. Let's try again. Yeah, there we go. The LEDs had come unplugged, the LEDs. Well, actually, the power LED and the power switch both became unplugged when I went to go do the cable management. I think I heard a beep. Yeah. Look at that. It actually worked. Nice. My drives are hooked up correctly. 16 gigabytes of memory. 5600G. Press F1 to enter setup. And yeah, that is definitely the normal BIOS setup utility. Look at that low BIOS revision number, but it looks like it doesn't matter. Wow. That was exactly what I was concerned about, but again, like I said, it looks like it doesn't actually matter in the case of this system. So yeah, I've got the setup. This is exactly like the newer machines, the 2018 era ones with the i7 7700s in them. It's basically exactly the same board. It's just an Asus, or sorry, an AMD platform instead of an Intel one. So I'm gonna get this set up, and I'll come back. So I forgot to finish this video, and I don't actually even remember where I left off with it. But they're in place now, and they've been here for a little while. I don't even remember which one it was. To be perfectly honest, but it was one of these ones with the green Pro boards, as you can see there. And they're working. Everything about them is fine. They're not, haven't had any issues with them, other than the batteries. The batteries apparently are bad out of the box, which is weird. I don't know how that manages to happen, but I guess it's because they've been sitting around for so long. We're also running a pretty old BIOS. Probably should update that, but oh well. Here's your video. They're working.